friends of the media. This is, as I say, a continuation meeting from the other night, primarily for the purpose of discussing some long-range planning and review the year and see where we are to date, et cetera, Mr. Attorney. Greetings to everyone. Welcome you. This is Lori's first meeting with us of this kind, and we appreciate her and the job she's doing. And we asked her to bring us a report to follow the county manager's report, just to bring us up to date on finances, where we are through the year, and then we'll see if any board member has any questions after that. So Lori, we'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Okay. Good morning, everybody. It's good to be here, bright and early on Saturday morning. Today we're going to talk just briefly about, we're going to talk about our general fund revenues and where we are. Talk a little bit about our ad valorem tax and our motor vehicle tax, our sales tax, then talk about expenditures, and then debt service, kind of lay that out as how our debt service looks over the next, carries out, I think, 2031 right now. So we'll jump right in and just talk about revenues. This gives you a snapshot. The first two columns, well, that 42.8 million, the very first dark blue column, shows last year's final revised budget as it stood. Well, I shouldn't say that. The budget as it stood as of December 31st of 2010. Then the 26.7 million beside that represents the expenditures as of December 31st, 2010. And then moving to the next two blocks, 45.1 million is our current budget as of December 31st, 2011, with the 27.8 representing how much we've spent of that 45.1. Both of these percentage-wise are right at 62%. So you can see we're on course, you know, first 6 months of last fiscal year versus the first 6 months of this fiscal year. Our revenues are about 62%. And of course, you've got to, of course, realize what that consists of. Property tax revenues, of course, kind of bump that up percentage-wise, because actually property tax collections through the first 6 months were at 79%. And they make up 26.1 million of that 45 million. So you've got to consider that. You know, you think, oh, 62%, we're 12% ahead, you know, because halfway through the year. But you can't look at it that way. And I'm sure you guys know that. But just to point that out, that of the 45 million revenue, 26.1 is taxes, and that's at 79%, because of course most people try to get them paid to, you know, the due date was what, January 5th or 6th, whatever the date was. So the majority of people are getting those in.
Laura, will this show as of December 31st or through the first week of January?
As of December 31st.
Because a lot of people
get
that window of January the 1st
right.
to the 5th, and a lot of people wait and pay their taxes in before the penalty gets in.
Yeah. I'm one of those.
Me too. The next report you'll see on the tax collections will be much higher than the percentage you see on December 31st.
And I think 79%, I mean, that's great. And again, it's comparable to last year. Last year, same time, it was a 79%. So as you can see, like I said, we're right on course with revenues compared to last year. Any questions or comments about revenues? I will add one thing just briefly about fund balance. You know, Jack touched on it briefly. Of course, I wasn't here last fiscal year. I've inherited, you know, come in part of the way of the fiscal year, but you're all aware that the fund balance in the general fund grew 1.5 million last year. Okay. Okay, so that, you know, you think, wow, 1.5 million, you know. But you got to keep in the back of your mind, we have already appropriated 1.8 million in the current year. So yes, you gained 1.5, but we have appropriated 1.8. So that means if your revenues come in exact, your expenditures all get spent 100%, you're going to bring that fund balance back down 1.8.
I think out of that we had originally appropriated 900,000 of the, wasn't it, of the
about 1.3
into the budget.
Yes, 1.3 was the, well, sorry, 900. You're right, 972. You're exactly right. 972 was the original appropriation. Then, of course, there have been amendments to date, which gets it up to the 1.8.
Education.
So, just to point that out, and of that fund balance increase last year, you had about $500,000 of things you had committed to that just weren't able to happen by year end. Good example is $300,000 for the property, the yellow building. That was part of a continuing contract that you had committed to, but the transaction didn't happen until after July 1. A couple of other big ticket items were there was $80,000 of federal adoption funds that had been received in 10-11 but weren't able to spend, so those had to be reappropriated. You had about another $21,000 for the transit scheduling software, and then about another $22,000, which was the county's portion of an activity bus that you guys had committed to. So those are just a couple of the bigger ticket items. I don't want to, bore you with the small ones, but.
But there wasn't, Commissioner Peppers and I had this conversation the other day. There, out of that 1.5.
The growth, yes.
There was none of that was unexpected, I guess, is what.
Right. That's what it sounded like to me.
That's why I asked. We had appropriated it or appropriated during the year, but we did
Right.
we did net.
Yeah.
Net, but we grossed back 1.5, even though we had appropriated that. So
Yes, that's true, because I looked through the CAFR, and again, see, I inherited last year, so I wasn't here to know
Right.
ins and outs, but just analyzing the CAFR, you guys underspent in the general fund $3.5 million. That's, every single department I looked at, underspent. But, see, on the other hand, there were revenues.
could you send a copy of that to the federal government?
What's that? The underspend, yeah.
Just a thought.
And then, of course, last fiscal year, you guys had appropriated 1.2 in fund balance, but you didn't have to spend it. So that was a good thing, because you had underspent 3.5, you'd appropriated 1.2. But in addition, there were some revenue shortfalls of about 800,000 roughly. But again, that's why you netted the 1.5. You had a 3.5 underspend, 2 million shortfall in revenues, not purely 2 million, but because of the 1.2 plug of the fund balance. So that's why your fund balance grew.
Just a little comment on that. We talked about this time last year about keeping our budget down, about encouraging Jack to talk to department heads, and I think people not only budgeted smaller, they spent smaller as year has gone on, and that's the primary reason for
Right.
fund
What happened
balance.
last year, exactly, because I was amazed,
Our
looking
folks
at
should
the
be
CAFR.
commended.
That's why.
That's
That's why I asked.
Yeah.
That's
some
a
of
big-
those
that's a big
departments
deal.
have
It really is.
That's why I asked the question.
They really held the line and underspent. So
Okay, thank you for that.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
But
Okay.
they're really motivated to help us keep the budget under control.
Mhm.
Because
They are.
in our discussions, especially, look, if you folks can keep our expenses down, the only place we have to cut is personnel. So if we want to keep delivering the same level of services, you got to really watch closely your expenditures. And they've done a good job, I think, over the past year.
I've kind of already jumped ahead and touched on this, but like I mentioned, this is just your ad valorem and motor vehicle taxes, and I'd already mentioned. This year's budget's 25.4, we've collected 20.2, so we're right at 80%, or 79% rather.
Or
And like
just-
you had
just
said,
a question-
Richard and his staff do
Just a
an
question
outstanding
between
job.
2011 and 2012.
Yes,
The 25 is your projection. That's collections on ad valorem, is that right?
yeah, the 25.4 is the ad valorem and motor vehicle combined.
So just to point out that there'll be an increase in the tax base a little
Yeah.
bit, because
A little bit.
Yes.
we left the tax rate the
Right.
same.
Yeah, there's a
Tax
slight,
rate
there's a
was the
slight
same
growth
for
in the
11,
tax
12.
base. Not like it used to be, when you hit
Yeah.
5, 10, 15% growth a year. We're lucky to get 1-2% growth.
I think it was
if we
about
do that.
1% from what the CAFR said, about 1% growth. I think your tax base is about 9.4 billion. Okay. Just to touch briefly on sales tax revenues, this is of course another large piece of the county's budget. Sales tax revenues, the good thing about this is there does appear to be some recovery, and of course it's still kind of too early to tell. If you'll notice, this slide says 5 months. The reason being, you've got to take into account the retailers collect the tax, they send it to the state, then it finally gets to the county. So there's a lag there.
We're always, what, 2 to 3 months behind.
Right. So this is all we have actual today is 5 months worth. And this actually shows what we collected in the month of January. We wanted to at least go ahead and key that to have, show 5 months.
Is this actual?
This is actual, yes. The, for 2012, you see the budget was 7.2 million in sales tax. We have actually received for 5 months, 3.2.
5 months beginning in June, July, August, September, October, November.
Right.
So this don't reflect the December.
It does not reflect, right.
December sales.
Right,
So
December sales
we're
are.
really hopeful that December sales will eclipse
Right.
last year's sales tax in December.
Right. So, compared to last year, for a refund to get those back. So, sales tax can be kind of quirky. You've got to keep that in mind, depending on when the towns that are in this county submit their refund, get their refund. That can cause fluctuations. They may get their refund in October of one year, but maybe December of the next fiscal year. So just keep that in mind. But I think it is a good trend to
What you're
see.
saying is the absolute numbers may not be helping us, but the relative one
The
year
relative,
last year.
6 months to 6 months.
That
5
same
months
problem
to-
exists every year, so.
Right.
So relatively, we're looking better. than-
Yeah,
than-
exactly.
That's a good indicator too.
It is.
Overall.
That's the
Economy.
But let me give you this number right quick,
Yeah.
and we'll move on. Back in 9-10, for the first 5 months, we were at 3.3. So of course, we had that dip, the recession hit, we had that dip, we dipped down to 3.1, but we're at least, like I said, looks like we're going on the right path. So that's a good thing.
And that's one indicator, like saying that sort of reflects the health of our local economy, at least the direction of it.
Right. Any more questions, comments about sales tax? Okay.
One
Another.
thing I would say about sales tax, there was a change when we got the Medicaid. If you recall, when we got the Medicaid expense taken away from us, they took an additional 0.5 cent sales tax away from us, which we don't have anymore. And they also changed the Article 42 sales tax from a statewide collection distributed based on population to a point of origin collection based and distributed. So our Article 42 sales tax is now like our first Article 39. Whatever is spent here, we collect. But actually, the funny thing about that is in Macon County's case, because our Article 42 is a point of origin, we actually do better off than we have been doing under statewide distribution.
When did that last council?
Went away in 2000, went away, well, I think it went away last year. This past
Yeah,
year.
the Article 44 sales tax, you mean, well, they sort of winged it out, all of us, they took, it was only a 0.5 cent, so they took half of that 0.5 cent one year, and then they took the other half of that 0.5 cent the next year, but they gave us 3 months, or 3 or 4 months of that in 1 year,
My
so
point
it
being
carried over.
that it disappeared between that 2009-10 figure and the one we just looked at.
Yeah.
Because that makes the 3.3 and the 3.284 look a whole lot better.
Absolutely.
You see what I'm saying? That's all I'm trying to say.
You're exactly
Is
right.
that, yeah, that does look like we took that dip, but part of that dip wasn't recession, part of that dip was we lost sales tax rate.
Of course, the other side is we lost having to pay that big expense.
Oh, I'm not saying we didn't get a deal, Jack, I'm just saying, from looking at the numbers, I'm trying to, it's
We're
actually.
one of the, I don't know if
It's
it's you, but
encouraging to
we're
me.
one of
That's an even better
a
number.
double handful of counties that we dart on better on the other side. There's a lot of counties that are not,
They are.
and they are very vocal.
Oh, yeah. They lost money. When they lost
They
money.
lost money big time.
They lost money and their schools lose money because the schools get a percentage of that. And so when that number goes down for the county, the amount of money available for school construction out of that percentage that goes to that went down as well. And so they're more than we are.
So we're gonna be lobbying heavy to keep it. There's gonna be a move underway to change back. In our case, we would like to, we like this new formula.
There's 14 counties.
And that's a good point that Jack brought up, that out of the Article 40 sales tax, we're required to put 30% over into the school reserve to make the principal and interest payments, and then we're required to take 60% of the Article 42 and transfer it over.
Yeah, 42 is what they put back to point of origin. And so those counties that were collecting sales tax based on population, and it's been spending 60% of that money on schools. That number went down, and so their 60% is still there, but their base went down on money they had to apply for schools. So they're on that as well as their current expense.
Okay, let's talk briefly about expenditures. So it's same similar slides. We're comparing 6 months last fiscal year to 6 months this fiscal year. Percentage wise, we're about 45% this year. I looked at all the departmental budgets in the general fund. Most people are hovering right around 50%. So it looks like me and Jack and I may need to have a talk and try to encourage them to hold the line. But I mean, I don't see that, of course, the whole 45 million will be spent. I'm sure there will be some underspend, but I don't want you guys to expect another 3.5 million underspend that you saw last year. I don't see that. But anyway, I'll still be at 6 months in the year at 45%. That's still good. You expect to be about 50% halfway through the year. Any questions or comments about expenditures?
And or just clarification for everybody, when you say 2011, 2012, you mean year ending 2011?
Yes, fiscal year,
ending
yes,
2012.
fiscal year, that's correct. Okay, and the last slide I have to talk about is just debt. This slide just shows what our debt payments are for next fiscal year and then on out, like I said, through 2031. You see, I just thought this was an interesting slide just to show that in the upcoming budget, we've got to allocate, make sure we have appropriated $6.5 million for debt. And of course it drops down to about $6 million the next year, 4.7 in the 14-15 year. The reason it drops off is the Highlands Gym, the Macon County Schools Highlands Gym debt. You've got one more payment on that, and that's going to occur in 12-13 next fiscal year, and it'll be done. And then your COPS issue pays off 2014-15 is the last payment on the COPS. So I just wanted to kind of throw this out there so you can kind of see where our debt load was over the next few fiscal years. And of course, just try to use that as a guide when we're thinking about projects that we may have to take on in the future. Maybe the scheduling of them, you don't want to bring on too much debt, within the next couple fiscal years. Try to wait till that COPS issue
Just for the benefit of those who are not familiar with COPS, I'm not sure everybody is, this is a new term for some, but that's a certificates of participation, and most of that COPS debt was where the county several years ago decided to combine a lot of a debt they had into one certificate of participation at a reduced interest rate that saved the county money. That included things like the debt on the South Macon Elementary School and so forth. So there's a lot rolled into that. So that's why you see such a big drop there between 15 and 16.
I think Laura pointed out the Highlands Gym was without of that. Correct? It was not included in that.
It's only included in 12-13, right? It pays out.
Gym is that first drop, you see,
Yeah.
between 13 and
Between
20.
13.
That was built in, I want to say, was it 05?
The gym. Let's see.
What, if you go back, yes, I am, been the longest
2003,
now,
issued the debt.
but if you go back and look,
2003.
if you go back and look, if you look at 2014-15, then you go to 2015-16,
Mm-hmm.
even though there's a lot of things, there's a lot of good things we think we've done, at that time the budget, when Commissioner Davis was on the board, and when we looked out, when we had this chart then, looking out, and our goal at 2015 to have our debt, Lori, at 10% or lower than our budget.
Okay.
So, I wish my household could run like that.
Yeah, exactly.
But if we can, and when hopefully the economy will start seeing ticks up, and we see ticks up in our bill inspections in December, we hope that holds it slow, but it's steady, seems like. So just for the board's knowledge that a few years ago when we had these discussions, Brandon, I think that was one of the goals, that we looking into the future, if, knowing that we're going to have to start shrinking our budget, if we could keep our debt load at 10% of the budget, that would keep the tax rate, we would not have to raise taxes on the citizens of Macon County as a result. So it seems like we're, even though with some expenditures that we had planned on, really no huge ticket items. I think that's what you're referring
Right.
to. No $80 million high school, nothing like that in the near future. But I think that's a good indicator, and hopefully that will hold.
Any more questions, comments? That's all I have. Thank you.
Then I do have a question.
Okay.
We hadn't talked about lottery in a long time. I worry
Well,
about the lottery.
Mr. Manager, do you want to take part of it? I'll take part of it.
You go ahead, the lottery, as you recall, the education lottery was supposed to be used just for education, but it's
Yeah, that one, that's the one.
been used for, other things because of,
No.
whatever reason, justification they gave. What that does, basically, it takes away from what it was originally designed for, and, a lot of counties are dependent on lottery money for capital improvements that they have already started, along with ADM money, which we didn't mention, they got frozen.
And you can tell those who might not know what ADM money
The average daily membership, we get money, several years ago, the state took away some revenues from the county and replaced it with what they call ADM money, average daily membership, which was money from corporate income tax to help us do capital improvements to schools. And now that they've taken lottery money and that they're taking our ADM money, some counties are having a heck of a time meeting their debt service obligations without raising their property taxes.
Well, my question was, and what brought it up was the debt load bill. And because I know that over the past couple of years, we've had to reach out and touch that money before it went away. And we've applied a lot of that, if my memory serves me right, to the debt service. That's
We've
where-
run over
That's where a lot of that money's gone. And so as I looked at that diagram, I'm thinking, gee whiz, hadn't thought about the lottery in a while. Are we just, is it just gone
No, we
away?
actually, I don't know, we haven't, I think the county has not really depended on lottery money as much for that debt service. as
Oh, no, sir. We're not dependent on it. That's the beauty of it. But we have the ability to grind down debt service if we can
Oh,
lay
if you
hands
had it, yeah,
on the
sure.
lottery money. So my question is, have we built up any lottery money? And if so, do we need to reach out and
What
touch?
we do on that each year, because anytime it's down in the county, in the coffers that the state has the key to, we don't leave it there very long. And so what
Right.
we've done is ask you all each year, when money is built up in that, then we draw it down as soon as we can.
Exactly. And it's been a while since we did that. That's why I'm asking the question.
If you remember last year, when we all went to legislature, one of the things on it was trying to reinstate the ADM money
Right.
All right.
to us.
This is why I got in an argument with the Speaker of the House over the property.
Yeah, I know. And you done good, Bob.
I thought I did.
We just hit, they had some committee hearings on the ADM money, but with the sentiment of public education that's now in Raleigh, that just could not get no traction at all. But it's gonna be brought back up.
Well, I just,
And
I
we
know
go-
we're watching it. I just wondered if. there was
And,
any-
and when we're down there for our conference, I think you'll see ADM money because, a lot of our neighboring counties. But the ADM money is very important, but it just don't seem to have much traction.
Yeah, I didn't think we'd ever get the ADM money back. And again, I don't know how long it takes to accumulate.
That's one of those
I just want to make
three-step
sure.
process where they freeze it, they take part of it, then they take the rest of it, and you don't get it back. That's the
Oh,
way,
yeah,
that's the way that works.
Last fiscal year, we received $447,000 in lottery funds.
Right,
That was placed in the debt service fund, which is of course where we pay all of our debt.
right. And my question, when was that? I've just forgotten. I've slept since then. What time of year is it that we go back and?
We had built up, I think, right, if you'll look in there, you'll see where our county had let ours sort of build up. Then when the top came around, we went in there and got every dime we could get.
And
And
that's,
applied it to debt service.
I'll just,
But I
all I'm
believe
trying to
that
do is
was in-
remind myself. and
I believe
everybody
that
else
was in
that's what we
2010.
It was.
We got 2 years in a row.
When the General Assembly started looking at budgeting and available resources, and the question came up, well, look at the counties, they have these big fund balances, they don't need all that money anyway, so why don't we help them relieve them of that, so,
Not trying to make an issue where there's not one. I just interested because.
but it is, and
Okay,
the
so-
same way with ADM money,
So
some
we're saying
counties,
our money's not.
some counties take their ADM money in the past and they've used it for just regular ongoing current capital outlay needs. Some counties have taken that and set it aside, and drawn that money and used it for big projects at one time. We've done some of that here. But just not to take any chances on ADM or lottery money. When it accrues down there to any substantial amount, we make sure we get it shipped into our
I just
account.
want to make sure we're still looking that direction, that's all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We are, but if they turn the spigot off to the funds on that and to redirect those to the state coffers, then we'll be hurt.
That's one thing.
If I'm not mistaken, before I came, Evelyn had drawn
She
down
had
lottery
just drawn it down
for
before
this
you
fiscal
came.
year, yes. So,
Yeah.
it's
We'll
usually,
get it.
$20 in there?
Take it.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Thank you, I'm sorry.
Any other questions of Lori or Jack on our finances to date, or?
I'm just glad it's not January 2009, that was not fun.
That's when it hit the
That's when it
fan.
hit the fan.